In February of last year, when Russia invaded Ukraine, the American media and politicians presented the Ukrainian war as an ultimate good versus evil thing. Putin, a Hitler-type invader, versus Zelensky, who was compared to George Washington. And every media outlet was going along with this. Every politician was supporting Ukraine. It was an overwhelming propaganda blitz. And Zelensky was the perfect guy to represent the side of good in this propaganda effort. He was an actor, after all. Who would better have played the role? But when the media says one thing, in unison, I am wary. We know they're lying when their lips move. And both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat, have supported Ukraine with $100 billion of aid. Again, we know they are lying when their lips are moving. That's the politicians. And in this video, we're going to explore what role the forces of evil might also be playing and the role they might have for Zelensky in the future. But up to this point, Zelensky was a hero, standing firm and resolute against the symbol of evil, Putin. I bet you've thought that way about him too, at least at some point in time. In his tight t-shirt, with hundreds of media opportunities to present as the type of leader that any of us in the U.S. would love to have. And many of our listeners wanted to believe that this was a good war. Initially, many of you had Facebook icons with the Ukrainian flag. It was easy to believe. We've been conditioned to believe the media, after all, and the government. And with a known bad guy like Putin on the others, and with a known bad guy as Putin on the other side, it was easy to ascribe good to the actor Zelensky. But cracks in his armor have begun to show. Did you know that he was involved in the FTX crypto conspiracy? You know, it was a really crooked thing. The U.S. would send money and equipment to Ukraine, which feeds the military-industrial complex. You've heard that they've given them, $100 billion. Zelensky would then invest it in FTX. And then FTX, in turn, would take that money and send it back to one of the two United States political parties in the form of election contributions. You've probably heard about this. It was a perfect money laundering scheme. Did you know that the Speaker of the American House of Representatives at that time, and third in line for the U.S. presidency, took a contingent of politicians to Ukraine? Now, why would she have done that? Might it have to do with the scandal? To ensure Zelensky knew the rules that he had to invest in FTX. Did she do this face to face so that none of it was recorded over the phone lines, etc.? Makes you wonder about her Taiwan trip as well. So this is all conjecture. We aren't sure, but it sure is strange, as she wasn't going to actually help the Ukraine war effort at all by going over. So what was she doing? Of course, Pelosi wasn't the only American to visit Zelensky. Several American actors, including Sean Penn, visited Zelensky. And during Sean Penn's visit this summer, he gave him his Academy Award for Best Actor, supposedly to honor Zelensky's leadership. But an Academy Award for being a Best Actor? I mean, this is too good to be true. Maybe because Zelensky is playing a role and not really leading. He's receiving this from the globalists who are supporting him, NATO, World Economic Forum, USA, etc. And now, in my opinion, Zelensky's greatest scandal has happened, and it reveals where his heart is and where the heart of NATO and the U.S. is. Zelensky is shutting down the Eastern Orthodox Church in Ukraine and arresting its priests and nuns. Yes, officially, he considers them traitors because the church is based out of Russia. Never mind that the Ukraine Eastern Church denounced the Russian invaders and the invasion and Putin and all that. When someone is shutting down churches and arresting priests, We know who is ultimately behind this, Satan. Is this a model for what might happen in the future in your country? A national emergency, will take everyone's eyes off what is really going on, which is a shutdown of a church. Christians are made scapegoats, and then bingo, they're persecuted, pastors are arrested, and churches are closed. So who is this Zelensky character? To world media, he burst on the scene in February, but he goes back a little bit. And he was born to a Jewish family. So he's Jewish. That's very interesting. And he has Hebrew genes. He was a television actor and played, of all things, the president of Ukraine in a long-standing show. He then became the real president in 2019. Okay, so that's Zelensky. What about the government in Ukraine? We act as if it's an old, long-standing government, but it isn't. It's a new one. In 2014, the USA, under President Obama, backed a coup to overthrow the existing Ukrainian government. Did you know that? An armed mob led by neo-Nazi right sector people stormed the Ukrainian parliament, forced the elected president, Yanukovych, and his members of his party to flee with their lives. Western mainstream media accounts seem to date the crisis in Ukraine back to Russia's reintegration of Crimea in 2014 and the decision by ethnic Russians in eastern Ukraine to secede from Ukraine. Both go back to that same time. But guess what? That was after the USA coup. It was the coup that led to those events. Media in this country do not go over that. The USA was behind all of this. And now NATO and the USA have an actor in charge to play the role that they desire. Did you know that Ukraine enforces this regime with a nationalized police force referred to as the Politsia? Did you know these brown shirt police have established a police state in Ukraine based on police brutality, which they say is necessary because they're at war? That there is a national no to the police protest going on in Ukraine from its people. We don't hear much about that either from the complicit media in this country. We have seen similar abuses of power in a national emergency with the trucker protests in Canada. Look at the heavy-handed treatment the truckers received and those who supported them from Trudeau, another globalist-supported leader who's really nothing but a puppet. Those of us in Western countries should look at these things very carefully. We need to realize that these are models of what is coming for us. Using national emergencies as an excuse to take additional power, nationalizing police forces from local police to create a police state, and shutting down churches and silencing Christian channels like this one. We probably only have a year or two, or maybe 3, in our opinion, before all these things happen. Now, are Christians in your church ready for stuff like this to happen? And I dare say they are not. In Matthew 25:5, Jesus said, "Both the wise and foolish virgins slumbered and slept prior to his return. They are all asleep before the return of the Lord." Wise and foolish. So don't think it's not you, me, and our pastors. All of us are asleep. And what will happen to the sleeping Christians if their churches are shut down and channels like this one are taken off the air? Many will fall away from the faith without a message of hope. Now, we need to wake them up, folks, and we need to organize them into a unified body outside of their church buildings for the days when churches are shut down, because it's coming. You can help in this effort. You can be amazing help. In fact, right now is the time. There might not even be another time This may be the only opportunity we have. Marquis Laughlin, Jake McCandless, and I have formed a nonprofit group, Last Days Overcomers. Next year, we're planning to hold conferences throughout the USA to do just that. Wake churchgoers up and create a national network of believers, but we need your help. We believe these conferences will be self-funding eventually, but we need you to pay it forward to fund the very first one. Without that help, we won't be able to do any of these conferences. On this channel, we get an average of 20,000 viewers per video. If each video viewer gave a single dollar, we would fund 2 conferences. That's how little is needed per person. So if you don't think you can give, you can give, no matter how tight finances are. Everyone can give $1 or $5 or $20 to this nonprofit tax-free giving opportunity. But, if you're looking for a larger end-of-the-year tax-deductible gift, this might be it too. If you're prioritizing your giving, what other organization is preparing the church for what is coming? Now you can use the QR code on the screen or click a link down in the description. In fact, pause the video right now and please do that. And know the website is working and secure. If you prefer to send donations, we have an address on that website too. Also, when you're on that site, be sure to download the free ebook like 1,000 others have. And there's even a place to volunteer if you feel you'd like to get involved. Now, back to Zelensky and his future role. Just like Elon Musk, the media and governments are setting these guys up to play a future role by making them appear to be heroes. That role that they're playing likely is in the next big thing coming. That would be the one world government after the Great Reset. The government that comes to power at that point. The United Nations has told us in 2023 they're planning on having the nations surrender their sovereignty to a group of, quote, thought leaders. Those who will lead our thoughts, they hope. I wouldn't be surprised to see Zelensky and Musk in this group, along with guys like Obama, Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, etc. Folks, it isn't comforting to know that these will be the ones telling us how to think, being our thought leaders. How do you feel about that? Will a guy like Zelensky also have a role with the Antichrist? Well, he's Jewish, which might be some advantage in all this. And he is a worldwide hero. We will have to wait and see because, these things are a little too far down the road to see it at this point. But all Christians should be very wary of this Zelensky guy. And don't forget to log on to the computer to give what you can to pay it forward to awaken Christians in your church and churches throughout the world via conferences and live streams. This is our moment. Listen to God's voice about this. And thank you for your faithfulness.